Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth Podcast. I'm your host, Wade Borth, and in every episode, my goal is to get you to think differently about how money works and ultimately to empower you to take control of your money and your personal financing system. Hello, and welcome back to the Wade Borth Podcast. Today, we're going to be just going through a real simple, thoughtful process that has been super beneficial to new clients that we've been working with and with some existing clients. Like, it's brought a lot of clarity to why they're doing what they're doing. Why is it beneficial for them to continue to say, hey, I love whole life. I love putting money in my policy. I love what we're doing. And or to the person that's saying, help me understand why I want to do this. And they're engaged in the conversation. They're curious about it. But what is it that is so engaging? So we're going to start a number of different podcasts and really videos, if we're on YouTube, just talking about this idea of what is the flow of money. And so today, we're just going to have the simple conversation. Now, you have to understand that money has a flow, and it typically doesn't deviate from this flow for the most part. It could be household income, it could be business income, it really doesn't matter. And we're going to talk about this from a structure of how we think about money and how we make decisions. I don't know that there's anything, I really don't want to introduce a lot of technical ideas here, because this is the overarching of having this understanding, which to most people, maybe go, oh, it's obvious, Wade. It's obvious. But to some people, it's not. And we're going to put some nuances into it because this conversation was shared with me from a gentleman that had sat through a presentation by a billionaire real estate guy by the name of Gary Keller. And I thought about this after you shared this with me. I'm like, why does Gary Keller take this conversation and simplify it so much? And it really dawned on me is like somebody like that is going to make a lot of financial decisions. Has to be making a ton of financial decisions on a daily basis. And if he doesn't have a process, or he doesn't have a flow chart of how he sees each one of them, how does he categorize them? And does he have time to spend 2 to 3 hours on every financial decision? And the answer to that is absolutely not. And I learned this from a CEO of a large corporation one time. He says, I have to make decisions and I don't have the time, and I can't afford to go back and relitigate those decisions and why I made them for a reason. They're beneficial. Are they 100% perfect? And the guy was very candid. He goes, we're not going to be 100% perfect, but we have a process when we think about it. And does it serve 80 to 90% of what we're trying to accomplish? If we can answer yes to all those things, then we'll go ahead and we'll start making decisions. And that to me is really what we're seeing here from the standpoint of how wealthy or how they compartmentalize decision-making about money, making financial decisions. So the point we make here is that money flows into our lives, right? It flows into our circles. And income comes in, and then it has to go somewhere, right? That cash flow comes into our income statement. And it either has to be spent or it's donated. Those are the two choices we have from the income statement. Well, we have a third choice. Then the next choice is that, do we have this and do we take it down into our savings component? And if you don't have the video of this, just imagine a small block above this where you can see income flowing into the small block. And then from there, you can say it's going to be spent or it's going to be donated to the right. And whatever's left, this is how we typically think. Then it goes down into our foundational liquidity conversation. And from there, it goes into our investment or what we call our wealth acceleration bucket. I would call this the proper sequence for the most part. So how most people do it in their lives and how most businesses do it is that they bring in their income and it hits their cash flow. And their cash flow says, okay, we need to spend it on our expenses, we donate it, we tithe, we do whatever we do with our money, and then we save whatever's left. The problem is that there's never anything left. So the proper sequence, and we all know this, if you read all the financial books, right? Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if you read Richest Man in Babylon, all the rest of them tell them that we need to pay ourselves first. And the payment to ourselves first typically goes to a savings or liquidity position. And so I'll set this up in that we have a thoughtful process that we'll talk about. Hey, what does your income look like? Let's get a really good relationship with our money. Let's get close to our money. We have a whole series that we call Tough Money Conversation. And we have videos. If you would like to see the start of these videos, reach out to me. Because quite frankly, we have hours worth of content. So we can show it to you, but the most important thing is we have to get close to our money. We have to have a closer relationship with our money. We do that first by understanding where our income comes in and where it flows out. Then we kind of come in and we say, I got income coming in. If I truly want to pay myself first, and I truly want to, I'll use it from a business standpoint. Back in 2020, why, and maybe a lot of you already know this because you've seen our content, why did most businesses fail? Because they had 20, 25, 30 days worth of liquidity.
They weren't prepared for any event whatsoever. Why do most people go into bankruptcy? Why do they have financial pressure? Because they haven't prepared themselves for an event that's going to happen that's out of their control. And if you have all assets, your business, I heard this many times, oh, I pour it all back into my business. Hey, that's great when everything works right. But how about the day it doesn't work right? How confident are you on a scale of 1 to 10? How confident are you that's the right choice? We have COVID hit, something that's completely out of our control. And you can debate all the merits or whatever you want about COVID. The fact is, businesses shut down because they had zero or very little liquidity. I heard one guy say, he says, I had scars from '08. He was in the real estate world. He says, I'm never going to be in that position again. He got beat up hard in 2008. He's like, I'm saving. I'm going to have 2 to 3 years worth of cash on hand. So the next time we have an '08, and he says, trust me, there'll be a next time. And this is, that was an '08 that had happened. So he's having 2 and 3 years of liquidity, but he loves his liquidity because it allows him to make really great decisions. But most businesses will take and they'll put it all back into their business. They'll reduce their debt. They'll do a lot of different things. And we have to understand there's a debt conversation here as well in this tough money process that we have. But we start thinking about savings. And then what is our saving strategy? And most people, if you ask them, and I'll say most people, some people, let's make it some people. If you ask them, what is your strategy? A number of people I've talked to says, I don't have a strategy. I don't have a clue. We just work and we keep our head down and we pay the bills, and whatever's left we might save, or we might go invest in another piece of equipment. Or if you're talking about a business, or if you're talking to an individual, we spend, and whatever's left at the end of the month we might throw into savings. And again, you might have a strategy. I'm not saying it's you, whoever's listening, but this is just a thoughtful process that we would like people to kind of engage in, have a conversation around, and we would love to have this conversation with you, because it's more than just a podcast. It's really about how does it serve you? How is it benefiting you? How is it your process, not our process? We give you the framework, but we allow you to build your process and build your numbers. So anyhow, the flow of money through this income statement. So money has to come into your income statement. You spend it, you donate it. And now just imagine you have a savings and a saving strategy. Okay, now I'm going to move back this down to, and again, if you can see this on YouTube or online here, it's a green box. And this green box is what we call liquidity or cash savings. And there's a number of different places you can save your cash. You can save a high yield savings account. Maybe that's a portion. Maybe that's 1 or 2 months worth. But your long-term savings, is it getting all the benefits it deserves? What do I mean by that? Are you getting all the benefits you deserve? Well, I would have you go back and listen. We did a podcast talking about the 8 benefits of whole life insurance. If your savings can give you all these benefits and give you liquidity and all the things that you need inside your savings, should that be part of your foundational or your savings conversation? So the idea of, do we hold enough money? And I would argue that most people don't save money, and we can see it in the data that we've done. We actually have what we call a tough money workbook. If you would like to see that, if you would like to have access to that, please email me. Wade, and we'll put it in the show notes too, so our emails are always down below. Wade@sagewellstrategy.com. Hop on our website, ask for it, and say, I'd like to see that flow of money. I would like to see what that tough money curriculum looks like. Because in there, we can actually show you, we can go back 40 years and say, no matter what the interest rate is on savings, people's savings rate are about the same thing. They're less than 5%. Again, this is what caused financial pressure in people's lives. And it typically shows up at the worst possible time. Real estate crashes, we had the '08 debacle, we had the 2020, we had what's currently going on with the stock market going wildly every direction. A, do you have enough money to take advantage of it? Or B, do you have enough money to insulate you from the impact of it? If you answer, I don't know, or maybe we do, the question is, would you like to know for sure? We can help you answer that question. So from there, again, it's the right sequence of the dollars. From there, we're going to go from the liquidity conversation into this idea of, we have investments, or we have what we call acceleration. That's not what I do. I'm not in the investment world. How you want to do it, there's a million different ways to go out there and say, how do I accelerate my dollars? But you need, in order to be able to do any kind of strategy from an investment standpoint, it has to come from savings. Money has to flow through savings. And if we don't have enough, typically, a lot of negative things happen when we don't have enough liquidity. And that's why it's important to have the proper sequencing of the dollars. I had a very successful real estate individual. He looked at this and he's like, he says, I get it now. He didn't understand sequencing until we showed him the simple picture. And when I say simple picture, if you're not see it on video, it's 4 boxes. It's 3 boxes. Let me rephrase that. 3 boxes with just, 4 arrows. That's all it is. But it's the visualization that helps you understand that it has to go in the right sequence, because if we have the wrong sequence, if we're investing or if we're accelerating our money when times are good, we all look like a genius. But what if we had the wrong sequence when times are bad? I'll save once my business is debt free. I'll save once my investment world or my real estate is so large, or my portfolio is at a certain level. And if you hit that level, then you look like a genius. And then you can start saving, but most people won't, because they're kind of hooked on that cocaine of, I don't need savings now. I've done so well. I can always borrow against my existing my properties, until they don't want to give you that loan, right? So liquidity is a tool to help relieve that financial pressure that most people feel in life, right? You laying in bed at night, like, shoot, I don't have enough. I have all these assets, but I have no liquidity. So the question is, how am I going to meet my bills tomorrow? How am I going to take advantage of opportunities? You don't have money to make that happen. So therefore, you don't have the right sequence. So I would just have you reach out to us. Love to have a thoughtful conversation. We have a whole process that walks you through this to where you can take control. You can be empowered to take control of that financial flow of money in your life, and really and design what it is that you want, and then gives you kind of that clear pathway of where you want to get to. And we actually have a really interesting video of what the long-term impact of having a clear defined benefit makes to your long-term wealth. It could double, triple, quadruple those dollars that you have 10, 20, 30 years from now, just by taking and saying, I need to have cash. And again, most people don't want to keep money in cash because they say it's trash, or cash is trash. I've heard that many times. That's because they don't understand there is a better place to store the majority of your long-term cash. So if you're interested, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to have you comment. Again, subscribe to the channels that you're listening to, because that helps us. That helps spread this message. Like, how can we empower people to find their own financial freedom? So thank you again for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
If you're enjoying this podcast or know anyone else that might be interested, please be sure to hit the subscribe button, and please leave a review. This will help this podcast reach and help more people by ranking higher in searches, and ultimately help more people get out of financial bondage. And don't be afraid to share this podcast with your friends and family, as we can be easily found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.